Porsche Exchange, it's all about creating a legendary ownership experience that embodies our guest lifestyle. Our Porsche service team utilizes cutting-edge technology that delivers a transparent service visit and keeps us in constant contact with our guests. And I can't think of anyone more qualified to work on your Porsche, new or classic, than our Porsche certified technicians. Whether you're a longtime guest or new to our dealership, I welcome you to experience legendary at the Porsche Exchange. If you're a Porsche owner looking for reliable, convenient service without leaving the comfort of your home or office, look no further and take advantage of the Exchange at Home complimentary pickup and drop-off service exclusively at the Porsche Exchange in Highland Park.
Three classes down, one more left to go in the test here in Virginia. We're live from the Virginia International Raceway. We welcome you to the final class event for event number 2 of the PCA Sim Racing Series 10 and our challenge class coverage right here on Podium Esports. Welcome alongside DJ Clark. My name is Kenneth Bueno. We'll have Ryan Bauer producing all the shots you'll see this evening. He's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Cameron Aubernon on social media all night long. Before we get to the green flag here from VIR, quick reminder that Series 10 is brought to you by the Porsche Exchange, which has been family owned and operated for over 40 years. Located on the North Shore of Chicago, the Porsche Exchange has grown to be the largest volume Porsche dealer in the entire Midwest. Along the way, they've won the Porsche Premier Dealership Award for many years in a row and has been chosen to be one of the few Porsche exclusive manufacturer dealerships in the entire country. Find out more at forporsche.com, or you can follow at Porsche Exchange on their Instagram page. Also to note, Six Sigma Sim Racing is proud to announce the Season 10 Clean Driver Award. One driver in each PCA Sim Racing class will win a Six Sigma Sim Racing $250 merchandise gift certificate. This goes to whoever earns the fewest incident points and license penalty points from their best 6 races over the season. And for more information, you can head to sixsigmasimracing.com. We're bringing DJ Clark, and DJ, we have seen a lot of chaos and in some cases elevated chaos here from the many classes at VIR for PCA Sim Racing Series 10 and Event 2. But we've got our final one, the Challenge class on tap. And once again, it is the same difficult VIR that we've been accustomed to seeing over the past couple of days.
Yeah, indeed it is, Kenneth. And as we take a look at this track, a couple of corners to really keep in mind here. That's going to be Horseshoe and Roller Coaster. Those are going to be your main overtaking opportunities on this track. But everywhere else, it is not about battling the cars out on the track with you. It is really and truly about battling the track itself. Coming from NASCAR Bend into Left Hook all the way up to South Bend, it is a seemingly never-ending sequence of corners. And we saw last night alone that you can really get yourself thrown off there a little bit if you are not careful. You've got to be very, very careful around here. You've got to be very cautious. And I think the biggest thing to keep in mind tonight is the driver that walks away with the fewest number of incidents, they're probably going to be the driver on the top step of the podium.
That's definitely true. We're going to have some strategy in this race as well, but clean driver is probably going to be the winning driver at the end of this one. You made a great point about how narrow this track is, and throughout a good section of this VIR track, you're going to have a lot of not runoff areas and pretty much not runoff throughout the entire track. You don't really see any places where you can find your way out if you make a mistake in any one of the corners, and you can really see it off of the front end of Andrew Smiley currently putting one of the 3 attempted laps for qualifying, as the session currently ticking down to the last minute and a half. But you don't have a lot of margin of error. If you go off, you're probably going to be slipping and sliding all over the place. But DJ, we have seen some fantastic competition nonetheless, despite its challenges of racing here with this GT4 Cayman Club Sport. And we're probably going to see the same with the heat race, 15 minutes, and then, of course, our main feature race at 45.
Yeah, it's really pretty incredible the way that this series has been able to put it together here, and I've got to commend them for putting the GT4 out on track here at VIR. There's a little bit less downforce than these drivers were used to last time around. There's a little bit less horsepower, but it really just makes it more of a challenge for these drivers. You're not really able to lean on the aerodynamics through the first sector and a half of this lap, and you've really got to rely a lot on the mechanical grip and getting the car slowed down. The other thing to keep in mind for tonight is I Racing has released an update on the service, and we've gotten a little bit of an increased engine torque here out of this GT4, so maybe a little bit of slipping and sliding coming out of corners as drivers get themselves adjusted to it.
I mean, that is true, and we do have some slow corners here at VIR, most notably that oak tree turn that gets you all the way to that long back straightaway, and especially here through roller coaster where you're going to be hard on the brakes and you're trying to maximize the exit as much as possible. We might see those challenges come apart, and we may see it also playing with the track temp. It's not necessarily the hottest at around 71 degrees Fahrenheit. However, we might see some slipping and sliding once those tires start to wear off, and you'll probably see a little bit more difficulty behind the wheel, and it's going to provide for a fantastic challenge from our field this evening in the challenge class. Let's take you trackside and give you your starting grid and see exactly where everybody is starting here for event 2 of the challenge class from VIR. It's Mark Duran with the fastest time at a 1:53.5 and almost a full second faster than the second place car. Jonathan Reber in the 1:47 will start alongside him. Randy Lervold in the number 614 is the last one in the podium position, and then you will find Casey McDonald in the number 15 right behind that third place car in P4. Fifth place will be occupied by the 167 of Andrew Smiley. We just saw him putting in a couple of laps in qualifying. Arnie Klassen in the 242 will be in P6 when we drop this green flag this evening. James Legault, the winner. Last time we had a challenge class race back at Road America. DJ, of course, a lot of great drivers in this starting grid, and so many that we need to watch for, especially as they move through.
Yeah, most certainly is. There we look down on the top 11. Alex Lidback in 11th. Robert Benson going to be lining up to his outside. Then Jeremy Main and Tom Crane. Chris Schoessler, followed by Lisa Eskridge, Jack Stevenson, David Purdy, Andy McCune, and Tim Schrock are going to round out this 20-car grid for a standing start here at VIR.
Just like the pro class and even the other classes here in PCA Sim Racing, it'll be a long wait until Barney the Flagman waves that green and everybody will be on their way to turn 1. The biggest thing, of course, about the standing starts, you have to make sure you execute this in the right way, because it could set you up, DJ, perfectly for the first sector, or it might just be disastrous. You might just be freight trained by everybody else, and it could be a big problem when you want to gain track position later on.
Yeah, exactly, and it's what I talked about. Horseshoe is one of the primary overtaking opportunities on this track, and you are going to be able to gain some positions going down to the inside or the outside off of this first lap. But the problem is it's a slightly off camber corner, and if you carry a little bit too much speed, it'll throw you off.
Want to escape the grass as much as possible. Cars hitting the revs, and the green flag will wave. One car did not make the grid, and I believe that is Casey McDonald. Did chirp over the radio and believe gave the reason why he could not make the grid, but green flag out for event number 2 in PCA Sim Racing Series 10 and the challenge class as they head for turn 1.
Looks like a pretty good run there from everybody. A little bit of 2-3 wide farther back down in the field, but Mark Doran off to a very good lead here. Reber and Lervold just trying to hold in behind.
It'll be not far, but Casey McDonald, will see exactly how he fares in all this. He has just spawned on the pit lane, so he might just be very well behind the 8 ball throughout this 15-minute heat. It's not many laps, it's only 8, and while this is a long track, you do have a lot of positions to gain if you're McDonald. We'll see exactly what happens, but a quick getaway for Mark Duran, Jonathan Reber, Randy Lervold, no problems getting through the first couple of corners, and I believe almost our first side-by-side battle could have arisen for P7. Andrew Smiley and James Legault, they'll both be single file, and just the case of that first lap, DJ, you want to get rid of those opening lap jitters. You don't want to be fighting all too hard and get yourself in a poor spot.
No, you certainly don't. And the other thing to keep in mind here is track temperatures are relatively on the cool side. It's about 71 degrees Fahrenheit on track right now. And that means you're really not going to be able to get these tires into their operating window until you're about a lap down. You've got to wait to really lean on it. We talked a little bit before about how important the mechanical grip is around here. So it's going to be a little bit of a wait and see proposition for these drivers, I think.
Yeah, probably will be closest battle on track. You're watching it right now. Arnie Klassen in the number 242, the driver out of the San Diego region. After starting in P6, already some decent progress up to 4th, and now possibly hunting in on 3rd place, Randy Lervold. The last time they crossed the stripe, well, it would be right now when they crossed for lap number 1, but it appears Arnie Klassen has been definitely fast in this first lap and will probably show on the timing sheet as they've all crossed the line this time, heading for turn 1. Klassen does have the draft off of the back of the 614. In fact, a little bit slower of a lap, but it didn't appear that way. And Arnie Klassen, a driver who did perform rather well at Road America in event number 1 at the track, DJ, where finished 3rd out of Mark Duran and James Legault, will finish right ahead of him. Arnie Klassen looking to possibly take the points lead if he gets a solid finish this evening.
Well, and I think from the downbeat here, Klassen is going to be in position to be able to be driving pretty well here as we ride on board a little bit farther back down in the order. I believe this is Robert Benson that we hop on board with here. Everybody climbing their way up through the S's. Klassen already up 2 positions. He's going to be in a really good spot here to try to close in on Randy Lervold. Just put some pressure to the back of that 614. I don't think he needs to be too aggressive with the move. He just needs to see if he can maybe force an error here out of that red machine, and that'll be enough for him to get on by.
And especially at this sector of the course where a lot of these corners are very quick and the lines are so important. In order to make them, you're probably going to try and force a mistake in that sector, but he does not. Lervold keeps himself cool, and it looks like that gap has grown. Klassen not able to get as much momentum heading out of Oak Tree, and of course this long back straightaway heading into DJ. What you noted earlier in the show was one of the most important places to pass here at VIR. This part where you're pretty much in a hard braking zone, you go downhill, then go back up the hill, then a quick left right, and this could easily throw you off. It's somewhat of a blind corner. Klassen trying to make the most of it, but so far nobody taking advantage of that corner for now, and the entire field mostly unchanged over the second lap.
Yeah, everybody pretty much staying in line here. And the tricky thing about trying to make that pass going into roller coaster here, Kenneth, is the problem that, well, we've talked about multiple times on this VIR circuit. Once you get into the actual twisty bit of the corner, it's very, very narrow and almost impossible to go too wide through. So if you're going to make a pass into that corner, you need to get it done on the backstretch before you really get into the braking zone and make sure you're clear on by. However, the flip side of that is horseshoe here that we're coming up to. You can go too wide through. I've seen many a driver do it. It's a little bit tricky, but there's plenty of room on that outside to make it work.
You're right on board with Jack Stevenson, the driver of the 116, currently sitting in the back half of the grid at 17th right now, but hunting on David Purdy in the 010. Stevenson was not a part of race number 1 at Road America in this class, so nice to see Stevenson here at VIR. Nice trio led by Lisa Eskridge in the number 8 machine. And Eskridge just looking to hold on in this purple and pink car. Oh, right in front of him, Chris Schuessler around into the tire barriers on the right side.
And Kenneth, I just caught a quick view of that out of the corner of my eye. I believe that was a solo incident there for the number 16. Just got things wrong, may have touched the grass a little bit. Let's take a better look at it here. This is coming up into the snake. There was no grass touch. He just carried a little bit too much speed coming through the right-handed section right after left hook, and that car looks pretty terminally damaged.
Remember earlier in the show, DJ, you talked about the torque updates they added to this GT4 here at iRacing. That car just unsettled, the rear end kicked out, and there was nothing he could do to save it. And unfortunately, Schuessler is going to have that front end damage, going to deal with it for the next 9.5 minutes in this heat race. Now, does still have 19th. Remember, Casey McDonald missed the grid, so he's still back in 20th, but not the proper way to start here at VIR. He's going to look to try and at least keep that in mind when we take the green for the main feature race, and we'll try to avoid those possible mistakes. We turn back to Arnie Klassen, now to Jeremy Main further back in the field. This is 13th place, trying to hunt on 12th place Tom Crane in the 864. Both of these drivers separated by about half a second. And one thing that also is a notable point, DJ, about this VIR track, and in some cases you can carry it over from last week's race at Road America, the long straightaways, you have opportunity to draft on the car in front of you, make passes like that. And if you have situations where you're hunting on a driver, much like Main is right now on Crane, you can use those long straights to your advantage. You've got the wake in the air, that car in front of you is punching the hole, and you can make some passes down the lane.
Yeah, you certainly can, as this is Jonathan Reber here making another similar unforced error. I believe that was into left hook. Just carried a little bit too much speed through the corner. He's going to be able to find himself slotting into line in 4th, but that's going to be 2 positions down from where he was in 2nd. And now David Palmer's going to be the one putting a little bit of action onto the back of him and trying to see if he could force another mistake out of Reber, as it looks like David Purdy is another one who has suffered a mistake this time going into Horseshoe.
And That was slipping through the grass, almost got into the tire barrier, but fortunately for Purdy, keeps that car straight. There's a look at Tim Schrock. That appears to be turn 1, also finding some trouble into the grass, but keeps it away from harm and is able to stay on track, although with a bunch of lost track position in 18th. Now with Jonathan Reber in the 147, it seems to be a mirror image of what happened at Road America not too long ago. Remember, Reber was one of the fastest and most dominant cars in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, found himself in a mistake. It took him out of contention for the rest of the race, and while he tried his dearest to get back through the running order, it was only good enough for 10th at the end of it. So Reber, just trying to make sure he avoids those mistakes, found himself in one, and now has to play catch up on the duo of Klassen and Lurvold going to turn 1.
Yeah, and it looked like there that Klassen was taking a little bit of a big look down to the inside. I think it was a little bit too far back to actually make a full committed pass down into the horseshoe. But I like seeing that out of Arnie. I like seeing that little bit of a movement there to just try to fill the rear view mirrors here of Randy Lurvold and try to see if he can elicit an error. I think for Jonathan Reber, he doesn't even want to mess with that. He doesn't want to try that to fill the rear view mirror here of Klassen. We know he's already made a mistake. I think he just needs to focus on driving his line here through the rest of this heat race, getting to the end, getting a good top 5 starting position for the feature, and see where that can set him off.
It is true. Remember, that 15-minute race, like you said, does determine where the drivers start for that 40-minute heat race. So you do have a lot to think about if you're Jonathan Reber right now, just running his own race. Forgot the mistake already, and although David Palmer, you're riding on board with him out of the Allegheny region, who started in 8th, now up to 5th, not necessarily thinking about that rear view mirror, and Reber's going to do his hardest to at least catch up to Klassen and Lurvold if they get a little bit too chippy in that fight for second. Now, one car you don't see in this mix, your leader, Mark Duron. He's already up by 8.5 seconds and counting, 8.7 as they head off of Oak Tree. And on that long back straightaway, it has been a dominant first few laps for Duron. And Duron, who, by the way, finished in 2nd at Road America not too long ago, certainly looking to put things onto the field. In that feature race, off goes Lurvold into roller coaster, in the grass, and into the guardrail.
Oh, and what did we talk about from Arnie Klassen on that last lap? Poking your nose to the inside, trying to force an error out of your competitor. That's exactly what he did here, Kenneth. He went to what will be the outside of roller coaster. I'm not even sure if he was fully committed to the move. Indeed, he braked way earlier there than Lurvold did. Lurvold just outbraked himself going into the corner. A master class in how to apply pressure there from Arnie Klassen.
I noticed that from Klassen, hopped on the brakes way earlier, and it felt like Lurvold wasn't even going to make the corner with that angle and almost slammed into the inside tire barriers near the apex. Fortunately, keeps it out of harm's way, but with this mistake, drops him back to 15th, and that obviously will play a factor in the final 4.5 minutes in this heat race going for the feature. So keep that in mind as this continues on. Here's a look at Robert Benson, the Falcon GT4, trying to work on Stacy Iwata, the #1 machine. Of course, Benson had a very interesting Road America race, but finished back in 17th on the feature. Iwata, though, would come home 2 spots lower than that in 19th. So these two drivers, DJ, looking for a bit of a recovery. When you have a little bit of struggles in the first race, you probably think of that second one as that opportunity to rebound and make that statement not only to the field, but to yourself that, hey, I can still be competitive and I still want a piece of that championship.
Exactly, and building that mental fortitude, building that bit of self-confidence going forward is so very crucial. And that's why I think here in this heat race in particular, this is going to be a big time to be able to see how they're able to go and to see if they're able to build a little bit of that confidence going forward. Benson here, though, looks like he's got a pretty good run on the back of Iwata right now. I don't know if he's going to be able to go enough to go down to the inside. He's certainly going to think about it. Iwata's going to have to go the long way around here and be later on the binders if he wants to make it work, but it looks like they're late on the binders. Goes Benson. That was a pretty move. Gets it barely woed up by the time they get around the corner, but he's still going to have the position.
I don't know how he didn't catch a piece of that grass. He missed it by at least a centimeter or less, and Benson somehow miraculously makes this move for 7th. And now on the back end of this, Robert Gallus and Alex Lidback out of the Lone Star region. The car number 10. It is now a 4-car train, a quartet heading back for turn 1. But a gutsy move out of Robert Benson somehow works. Iwata backs out. And Now here's a look at Lidback, potentially looking underneath Gallus in turn 1, and they almost caught a bit of Iwata there in the same place.
Yeah, it looked like there that Gallus said, well, the best defense is a good offense here, and I'm going to try to make an attack on Stacy Iwata. Not quite close enough to make it work, and I think, frankly, going that late into the corner may have set him back just a little bit and put him into the clutches here of Alex Lidback. And that's the thing you've got to be careful about when you're fighting in these 3-4 car trains, is you can't absolutely go for broke. You can't just go for every move that you see, because you have got to be conscious about what is going on behind you and if there is pressure from a driver behind. And that's exactly here what, for example, Jonathan Reber's having to do, trying to close down an Arnie Klassen.
Trying to get there to second, and remember, we did see David Palmer in this mix. He's not too far behind either, but not too much progress on these two that have been tussling for that second place spot. And remember, all of them, of course, still trying to catch Mark Duran, although that 9.7 second gap only continues to balloon each and every lap. And by the time we're getting to the last minute and a half, you can figure out here, DJ, that Klassen and Reber aren't necessarily looking for that first spot. They probably don't care at this juncture. They just want to have a decent starting spot for that feature race, and that's all is really what's on their mind. Lurvold hard into the back bumper of Lisa Eskridge that was coming out of Oak Tree. Eskridge taking a skip through the grass. And Randy Lurvold, remember, DJ, was in the top 3 earlier tonight, now with significant trouble.
Yeah, and look at that. I think that may have been Jack Stevenson in front of him that actually took to the alternate pits to get out of the way here. So this is Lisa, takes a little bit of an off-track excursion there, comes back onto the track, clips both of those drivers, I believe. Lisa's going to take a little bit of a trip, and kudos here to Jack Stevenson. That is some great wherewithal. Let's ride on board the driver of the 116 and watch this heads up to duck down to this alternate pit lane when he gets almost spun.
That is beautiful work by Stevenson, not only to recognize the fact that he was about to go completely around with that contact from Eskridge, but saw that opening there off the exit of Oak Tree and said, hey, I'd rather take that alternate route than try and fight this car and end up nose first into that tire barrier. Stevenson keeps his race alive and sits 13th right now, basically in a league of his own, a long distance to Jeremy Main in P12. But this definitely is a sigh of relief for Stevenson, who's going to be able to hold on to his race. And Randy Lurvold, despite the troubles and despite the damage, is working on the back bumper of that 116. So safe to say, DJ, the thing's not over yet for 13th on the track.
No, it's certainly not, but he has got to be careful here, because as we watch Mark Doran here, your leader coming through roller coaster, he is on the white flag lap, Kenneth. He is coming to the checkered flag here. We're about to be done with our sprint race.
Going to go through Hog Pen for the final time. Arnie Klassen and Jonathan Reber are about separated by a second. It appears that fight for P2 might not be changed anytime soon. And off the final corner to the start-finish line, Mark Duran leads every single lap in this heat race and takes victory convincingly. Arnie Klassen to come home in second. Jonathan Reber, despite his dearest attempts to get by that 242, not successful. David Palmer will come home in fourth. Andrew Smiley to wrap up the top 5, and James Legault, the winner at Road America, is not too far behind either in P6. There's Robert Benson, the Falcon Machine, coming home in 7th. There's a look at Legault out of the Central Indiana region, and a mostly clean first heat race, and now we got a bit of action here coming off of the final corner. A couple of drivers in the mix, including Lurvold working on Stevenson and the final attempt.
And look at how much Lurvold is trying to hustle that car down through Hog Pen, clobbering the curbs down to the inside. I think if he had one more lap, he could have pulled this off, but the checkered flag is going to fly on these two, and they are not going to change position there. That will be Stevenson coming home in 13th, Lurvold coming home 14th.
So that battle settled, and most of the close contact that we had between cars around each other, most of those positions not necessarily changed. There's a look at Lisa Eskridge, now coming off of Hog Pen, the final corner, going to rise up the hill and be greeted with that start-finish line and the flag stand with Barney the Flagman there. And there's Andy McCune in P16 now coming home to the start-finish line and going for turn 1. So that will pretty much do it for this first heat race. About a minute and a half for the rest of the field to get past the start-finish line. And that's a bit of a battle there. David Purdy, Casey McDonald going at it. And McDonald goes into the guardrail first and actually miraculously picked himself up to 18th after missing the starting grid. And there's Tim Schrock and Chris Schuessler coming across the line.
Yeah, and there's Schuessler there. Remember, we saw him have some issues earlier on, and once he crosses over the line, that should be the last driver here to officially take the checkered flag from VIR. That's going to send us into about a 5-minute warm-up session here, Kenneth, and then we get into this feature race a little bit later.
And we will see that feature race, and just how important that will be, we'll find out in a couple of moments' time. Mark Duran, the winner of the heat race, leads every single lap and pretty much ran away from the field. Arnie Klassen behind him in second. Jonathan Reber to wrap up the podium. David Palmer, Andrew Smiley, James Legault, Robert Benson, Stacy Iwata, Robert Dallas, and the number 10 of Alex Libak to round out the top 10. And we'll look at the rest of the field from Tom Crane all the way down to Chris Schuessler. Some of these drivers with some issues throughout the race. Some of them just carried their speed in the mid-pack throughout the entire time. In a couple of minutes, we will have our feature race for Event 2 of PCA Sim Racing Series 10 on behalf of the Challenge class. Don't go anywhere. We've got more on the other side here on Podium Esports.
Brake a little earlier if that's going to be the case. He's actually got a nose ahead as they come down into the braking zone. He's going to do it the hard way.
If you're a Porsche owner looking for reliable, convenient service without leaving the comfort of your home or office, look no further and take advantage of the Exchange at Home complimentary pickup and drop-off service exclusively at the Porsche Exchange in Highland Park. At the Porsche Exchange, it's all about creating a legendary ownership experience that embodies our guest lifestyle. Our Porsche service team utilizes cutting-edge technology that delivers a transparent service visit and keeps us in constant contact with our guests. And I can't think of anyone more qualified to work on your Porsche, new or classic, than our Porsche certified technicians. Whether you're a longtime guest or new to our dealership, I welcome you to experience legendary at the Porsche Exchange.
Heat race completed, feature race on the way as drivers warm up for the feature race in Event 2 of the PCA Sim Racing Series 10 Challenge class as we bring you our coverage right here on Podium Esports. DJ Clark and Kenneth Bueno along with you for the ride. Ryan Bauer, our producer this evening, using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Cameron Auburn on our social media throughout the entire race. And DJ, we saw a lot of interesting things in that heat race. Of course, a couple of contacts, so some miscues, some misinputs, you name it. There was some drama nonetheless, but we did have some decent racing. A lot of close-knit action between the drivers, and only 20 of them as a matter of fact. So we've seen some great competition with the field size, and also these drivers have taken their notes. Now they head over to what's going to be this 40-minute, 45-lap feature race and give it what they got.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as we raise the amount of time that you're going to be running around here, you've got to be even more consistent, even more clean. You have just got to be making sure that you are not making mistakes that are going to be giving time or giving positions over to your drivers. I guarantee you, Kenneth, if you're able to run a clean line, if you're able to run a line that is not going to put you off into the grass, you're going to find yourself higher up in the order.
Now then comes the note of how can you beat Mark Duron. He was blistering the field in practice. He destroyed the field in the heat race by about 10 seconds, and now he's got the feature race on tap. So if the field can find answers, then maybe we'll have an outstanding race for the lead. We'll have some strategy as well. So we'll see what Duron does in response. We'll see what the entire field does to try and get around them to get the checkered flag. A reminder that PCA Sim Racing social media offers in-race reports, breaking news, and announcements through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. To subscribe, key in the platform name and add /PCA Sim Racing. Of course, all of the updates coming from all of the multiple platforms as PCA Sim Racing continues through Series 10. It has been a monumental effort over the past 4 years, DJ, to get to this point. Series 10 in general, obviously, to us, kind of just feels like a regular day at the office with the drivers on track. And much like us, to them, it probably feels the same. But to get to Series 10, it's such a monumental achievement. It's been awesome to see.
It really and truly is, and I love the fact that they're changing things up as they have done every single season, every single series that we've come in to cover PCA, changing from the GT3s to the 992s to the GT4s really adds a sense of challenge here for these drivers, and I think it does a fantastic job.
And speaking of the 992s, they are not far away in PCA Sim Racing Series 10 future, as we'll take a look at your starting grid. This was, of course, after the results of the first heat, and it's Mark Duron who led the entire way through the 15 minutes, now will lead us through the 40-minute feature. Arnie Klassen, who finished second in the heat, right behind in P2. Jonathan Reber to round out your podium in third. David Palmer in fourth. Andrew Smiley to round out the top 5. Then goes James Legault, Robert Benson, Stacy Iwata, Robert Gallus, and the number 10 of Alex Lidback, DJ, to round out the top 10 on the grid. And here they go. Green flag in the air. Just as quickly as we ran to the top 10, we get the green, and it's Mark Duron leading them to turn 1. Arnie Klassen and Jonathan Reber going side by side in the first corner.
Yeah, Reber off a very good start there, trying to take a look down into the inside. He's going to time muscle Klassen out of the way there as they bring their way through Horseshoe. Trying to see here, this is going to favor back to Klassen as they go through NASCAR Bend, and indeed, it is going to be Klassen regaining onto that top 2 position.
And Klassen going to be able to overcome that number 147 heading for NASCAR Bend and the rest of this first sector through Horseshoe, the left hook, and of course the snake section of VIR. The entire field about single file, much like we saw in the first lap of the first heat. But remember, it will take a while before these drivers get a little more accustomed to their situation, before they start to make battles happen out on the track. You can see the distance covering first through P19 on the racetrack, and further back, I believe I almost saw a pass attempt. Andrew Smiley going over the hill on the climbing S's near the south bend, trying to get the best of David Palmer, but ends up falling to James Legault. Both of them side by side in Oak Tree. Car off, and that's Mark Duron, the leader.
Contact there with the number 27 of James Legault. I think he just maybe got on the throttle a little bit too early coming out of Oak Tree, and it sent him off into the outside there, Kenneth, and now he is going to have to play catch-up and bring his way back up through the field.
We asked the question, could anyone stop Mark Duron? Well, it looks like Mark Duron just about stopped himself, heading for Oak Tree, just got a little bit too eager on the brakes and sent it wide, and pretty much squared hit on the left side of his GT4 into the tire barriers. Here's a look at Mark Duron. There's the gap back to Arnie Klassen before this incident. And you just make one mistake, you overthink things a little bit, or you think you're okay. The car does not respond. And while that is a simple, not deadly mistake, DJ, here for Duron, it's going to plummet him in track position, and it's going to give the lead over to Arnie Klassen.
Yeah, indeed it is, and I stand corrected there. That wasn't an issue on corner exit. That was actually an issue there on corner entry. Just carried too much speed going down into Oak Tree, and that carried him off into the outside grass. And look at all of this behind him that you saw there on that replay, that absolute stack up as everybody tried to be able to find their position around him. This is going to completely and totally change every single complexion of this race.
And with the way that he rejoined the racetrack, everybody had to slow down significantly, and it checked everyone up. And like you said, DJ, just brought about that large gaggle of GT4s on that long back straightaway. Here's a look at Mark Duron as he tries to get around now James Legault and Stacy Iwata. The first time, DJ, that we've seen Duron in any type of traffic, whether that be lapped cars or not. And with Duron's mistake, it's going to force his hand for the next 36 minutes and counting at 486 with a lot of pressure, and you can see there on the left front a bit of damage as well.
Yeah, and the other thing here to keep in mind is I've got to think race control may be having a little bit of a look at that rejoin. That was not the safest of rejoins. Kenneth, I would not be surprised here if Mark Duran is going to get a penalty before everything is said and done.
And that's going to be disastrous for his attempt at getting the points lead, because remember back in race 1 for this challenge class, Mark Duran was second to James Legault, who has the points lead going into tonight. But Duran, with the way he had performed in that heat race and what looked like how he was going to perform in this feature race, it appeared as though he was going to run away with the points lead heading into Suzuka, but that does not appear to be the case, although he does have some time to get back up through the field, so that's the only good thing that's going on. We do have word that Race Control DJ is discussing that rejoin from Mark Duran, so sooner than later we might have word on what the fate is going to be like for the Pacific Northwest region driver.
Well, right now, his fate is going to be trying to send a move here down to the inside of James Legault, but just not able to make it work. And really and truly there, Kenneth, I think you're seeing the difference between running in clean air and the difference in running in dirty air. When Duran was out in the front of the field, he was able to absolutely have all of that air to himself, use as much as possible on the downforce. But we've got a couple of cars down into pit lane, as it looks like Alex Lidbeck has come on in.
Remember, Alex Lidbeck was the last driver in the top 10 after the end of our first 15-minute heat. Now, this appears to be an unscheduled stop, but no problems in the lap prior. So Lidbeck just taking his time on the pit lane, and he does have 0x, so he has a very clean car, and he has had no mistakes over the first couple of minutes. Now make it 5 minutes and counting lap number 3 of what we're going to expect to be 21, not 45 laps. But Lidbeck now out of the pit lane after 38.5 seconds. So maybe that was a strategy call, played on purpose just to get that over with for the end of the race, but we're not entirely sure. And we'll try and keep you updated on what happens with Lidbeck moving forward. Battle for P6 still on between Mark Duran and James Legault on the back straightaway.
Yeah, but Legault had a little bit of a scruffy run there coming out of Oak Tree, and Duran recognized it, and he's going to put that number 486 down to the inside here, almost banging doors coming down the back straightaway as they go. I think that's going to force Duran to back off, and indeed Legault is going to be able to hold on to the position for now.
Duran's going to send it in at the entrance of Roller Coaster as he broke a little bit early in the corner, but not enough to get around that 27 nor phase him as Legault tries to set his eyes on the next car in line. That blue and red Porsche GT4 came in, and that is Stacy Iwata now racking up the top 5 and also trying to catch up to Robert Benson. There's a look at Iwata's rear bumper and the rear wing out of the Canada West region. And Iwata now chasing for turn 1, looking for Robert Benson, and just a decent gap back to Legault, but we'll try and figure out how they're going to settle out in the mix, and of course where Duran is going to end up, just because of how Race Control is going to decide this. But a nice 4-car train all within, I'd say, a second and a half here, DJ.
Yeah, everybody running pretty close together here with Iwata, Legault, and Duran, as Duran's trying to be able to try to take a look there going down into left hook. We ride on board with the 486. I thought for a second that he was going to be able to get a move done on Legault as they went down through Horseshoe, because Legault ran a little bit wide, but he wasn't able to quite make it work, and he's just going to have to keep applying pressure here behind.
And the last time they crossed the line, Duran set a 155.7, while Legault put up a 155.298. Now remember, again, like I said, Duran, this is the first time we see him in any type of traffic all night up until this point. So this 486 is in a unique scenario, and also to mention, he's got damage. So those long straightaways, he's at a disadvantage because he will try his best to be in the draft and to keep those miles per hour as high as possible down the long straight. And especially here heading for Roller Coaster, that does not appear to be the case, and he falls back on Legault. Now make that about 0.8 of a second, but we'll turn our attention back to the race leader. It's 2.1 seconds between Arnie Klassen and the next car in line, Jonathan Reber. There's a look at the 242.
Yeah, and I noticed here on the last lap that Reber actually set down the fastest lap of the race. So the 147 not waiting on their laurels here at this point. You see the rear end of the car wanting to break away a little bit there through Hogpen. There's a lot of lateral load that goes through the car, so that's not altogether surprising. Let's take a look here as they come across the stripe at this point. A 154.52 from Klassen laid down a 154.6 by Reber. So it looks like Klassen has responded, and he is going to try to expand that gap a little bit more at the front of the field.
Klassen was easily the second best car over those first 15 minutes, DJ. So you can expect here, if Doran's not in the equation just because of the mistake now that he has put on the racetrack entering Oak Tree, Klassen has all the right to just pull away and do whatever he wants. And if that means putting up the best laps and running away from Reber in the 147, then that's exactly what's going to be the case. Nice trio from 10th back to 12th. This all starts with Jack Stevenson, who made that absolutely insane run onto the alternative access road to get away from contact with Lisa Eskridge. And then Jeremy Main, Tom Crane, the 20 and the 864, who, by the way, were also close to each other over those first 15 minutes. Now 11th and 12th with Randy Lurvold, not too far behind either.
Yeah, good little four-car train starting to develop here, and I do not feel a lot of envy at this moment for Randy Lurvold. He's going to be getting a full blast of that dirty air, and coming up through the Snake and the Rising S's, that's going to be very, very difficult. Now, as we've said, these GT4 cars don't rely as much on downforce as their GT3 counterparts, but there's still downforce being generated, and through those high-speed sweeper sections, you're going to feel that, and what Lurvold is having to do is he's having to lift off a little bit more, maybe use the brake pedal a little bit more, try to keep that car underneath him, and he really did it to perfection here, and now he's going to be all over the back of Tom Crane going down the backstretch.
This is going to appear to be a perfect setup for the roller coaster section here at VIR, and while it may not be enough to officially go side by side with the driver of the 864, it is good enough to put that pressure on him, and we saw in that 15-minute race, and specifically what happened to Lurvold, what happens when you've got a driver fighting you on either the inside or outside. They can pressure you into a mistake, and they can send your race sideways and off of the track, much like we've seen a couple of cars do here this evening. We're still going to watch this four-car train led by Stevenson, but no moves made quite yet, although as they cross the line, we'll see just how close they are in terms of lap time. For Stevenson, it appears to be a 156.8, and for the drivers behind, sort of variance between Main's 156.6, Tom Crane's 156.9, and Randy Lurvold's 156.7. So Main the fastest out of this quartet, and Lurvold on the back end, the second fastest of this group. We'll see if they do anything, but they are as well, DJ, catching the car in front of them. That is the number 809, and that speckled the yellow and black car of Robert Gallus. So it may just be 5 cars before it's all said and done.
Yeah, very well may be. Stevenson's only got about 2 seconds to try to make up to Gallus here to try to close that down in the Northeast region driver. And he's going to be trying to push here, but Gallus is in a good position. He's got about 6 seconds up the road until he gets to Andrew Smiley, so he's going to be getting plenty of that clean air. And I think at this point, 2 seconds is going to be enough that he's not going to be able to really have to think about Jack Stevenson behind him. He's going to be able to run his own line, not worry about having to go defensive or anything like that. And so I think that's going to be a good run there for him.
Yeah, that is true, and although Gallus was a little bit slower when they crossed the line last, he said a 157.525, it is still, with the gap, like you said, DJ, it is definitely bearable, and you can really just make ground and even stagnate the ground that they're making behind you and just be able to hold your own. And while we get closer to what might be our first and only round of pit stops here, and in the next 28.5 minutes, we should expect to the end, it might just be Gallus's place to be at this stage. Just needs to avoid all of those mistakes. Here's a look at Jeremy Main on the back end of Jack Stevenson, closed in quite a bit, but there's also a slight possible battle for 5th. Remember, Dorn was trying to get around the go for the longest time for 6th. He finally accomplished that. Now another driver he has to check off the list of getting by is Stacy Iwata in turn 1.
Yeah, and crucially here, Iwata has been able to catch up to the back of Robert Benson in that Falcon liveried machine, so we're very well could see a 3-car battle here as Doran tries to run that car around the outside of NASCAR Bend. That's not exactly going to play itself out nearly as much as he would want it to, but he's able to carry good momentum here going down into the left hook. This is a portion of the track that's just all about pressure. You can't really send a move through any of these corners, but what you can do is force that driver in front of you to make a mistake.
See what Doran can do here on Iwata. Remember, they are both trying to catch Robert Benson, who's now settling in 4th in that 71 Falcon Tire GT4 Club Sport car. And Iwata still not fazed by Doran's pressure here as they go through the climbing S's now to the South Bend. And probably one of the toughest parts to not go off track, but it is a beautiful setup by Doran. Going to dive to the inside and no tree for 5th.
Very, very aggressive stuff there from Mark. He's going to get down to the inside of Stacy Iwata and be able to pull away here. And James Legault says, I'd like a little bit of that, please, as he's now going to tuck up behind that blue machine and try to get a little bit of a run here going into roller coaster.
A gorgeous setup by the 486 and a textbook pass coming out of South Bend. And that is a place, DJ, where you can make a mistake. You get a little bit too eager going into that corner. You have to really park that car on the entrance, and then you could really lose a lot of time on exit. And with this part of the track being so momentum-based, and with this car that does not have that much power, you have to use that to your advantage, and that's exactly what Duran did there. Battle here further back to the field. This is 411. Lurvold, entrance of the roller coaster, this time does not make the mistake and surges to 11th.
He's going to be able to make that work there. We're seeing more and more drivers be able to make those plays into roller coaster now that they're feeling a little bit more comfortable behind the wheel of the car. Legault going to be the latest one here as he tries to close in on the back of Stacy Iwata. Going to be later on the brakes going down into Horseshoe, and he's got it done.
And Iwata does not offer the crossover. Legault going to be able to hold that spot. And now sight set on Mark Duran in the 486, who, by the way, has infinitely caught up to Robert Benson in that 71 as they last crossed the line. Almost a full 0.2 of a second difference between this 486 out of the Pacific Northwest region, and then Robert Benson right in front of him. So Duran is definitely picking up as much as he can off of that incident in Oak Tree, although it might not be good enough for third, second, or P1, led by Arne Klassen. This is probably the most amount of damage control you can do, and like we saw about a lap ago heading into South Bend, that might be Duran's best place to be on the racetrack. Gonna hop on the brakes, try to get the best off the exit, and does. Possible pass attempt, entering Oak Tree for the second time.
He's going to look down to the inside, muscles his way around, just pushing his way on through past Robert Benson. And that tells me that even though there's a little bit of damage in that 486, that is a driver that feels very, very comfortable with their car. And I got to be honest here with you, Kenneth. 6 seconds left, 6 seconds to try to close down. We may see something as we check a replay here from Jeremy Main, getting things wrong coming out of Hawkpad.
And that might be the first mistake we see out of the last corner, DJ. Jeremy Main just grabbing a piece of the grass, and that car immediately goes for a spin. Now, luckily, no one else gets into him, and Main is able to stay out of any tire barriers or barriers in general. But Main, of course, with those mistakes, it drops you so far back in track position. And also one thing that at least we have taken note of throughout PCA sim racing here at VIR for Event 2 is that as soon as you make a mistake, you drop back in track position. Sure, there might be cars around you, like in the case of Andy McCune and now Tim Schrock up ahead for 16th. This track, and as big as it is, it really lends itself to a lot of long distance racing where you're going to have large gaps in between groups of cars. So you have lost track position, you lose a lot of time, and therefore going for the pit lane in that pit stop, you're probably going to have a lot of time to gain and a lot that is basically impossible to get by.
Yeah, very much so. And we haven't really talked a lot about that pit stop that we will see coming here as we're about to tick over into the halfway point of the race. We're about 3-4 minutes away from that here at this point. And when that does happen, I think that's when that pit stop window is going to open. I would anticipate it staying open for about 10 minutes. And it's going to be a little bit interesting to see when drivers decide to come in. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a change from what we saw last night, I think, where lap traffic was a big, big dictator when it came to coming down into pit lane. Now, I think it's going to be a little bit of pick your poison on just wherever you feel comfortable to come on in.
It's sort of interesting to look at lap traffic being a factor at a track as big as this, and it kind of reminds you of like a Bristol or like a Martinsville where you can get to lap traffic so quickly, and then if you find lap traffic, this is a little bit funny to think about. We do have a possible battle for, I believe, P10 between Jack Stevenson and Randy Lurvold, but you're looking further down the road, and this is Jeremy Main. This is actually Andrew Smiley further up the field. There is another blue car up ahead the road. And that appears to be Stacy Iwata in the one machine. Kind of confused with Main's blue car as well. Both of them bearing similar colors tonight from VIR. And now here's a look at Lurvold working on Jack Stevenson. And a look on the inside, heading for roller coaster.
And this is going to be another maneuver here where Lurvold just needs to be later on the binders, tries to be able to hold it out. Does he get everything wound up? Clips that apex perfectly. That is how you get it done. A good move there from Lurvold to be able to move himself up into the top 10.
It's a perfect pass, and now the next car in line, Robert Gallus in the 809, although that is about 3.2 seconds of a difference between those two cars, so it might just be a little while before Lurvold can call P9 his to take. Here's James Legault riding P6. Now this is behind Robert Benson. Remember, the 486 of Mark Doran got around Benson a couple of laps ago, and it appears that Benson is only getting a little slower this time by the lap. 155 flat, but in the hundreds mark, it was around 9.9. Legault was a 155.057, so a little quicker. Legault has built up so much momentum now, heading for the S's and the climbing S's, that South Bend and Oak Tree might just be another place to look for the pass, just like Doran did about 2 laps ago.
Yeah, we're going to have to see if he's able to do it. It takes a real mastery of grip to be able to make that pass work coming out of South Bend. But let's see here as we ride on board with Legault. He's able to carry good speed through the corner, closed down by a couple of car lengths. He's not going to be quite close enough, I think, to make that move on the number 71. And indeed, he's going to have to stay in line here for the moment. Takes a big clobber curve there to the inside. That's going to slow him down just a little bit, delay his throttle application. But he is going to be able to get the benefit of the draft here as that gap comes down under 3.5 tenths of a second.
And this will be a good setup for the next lap in turn. If Legault only continues to catch that exit out of South Bend and heading for Oak Tree, it could just be a pass entirely. And this is obviously the last spot in the top 5 we're looking at here between these two at stake. So there is a lot to consider here as we get into the final 20 minutes here from VIR. Tom Crane under Jack Stevenson for 11th.
Yeah, Crane going to just try to use that draft to his advantage here as they go into roller coaster. Stevenson a little bit later on the binders, though, but it's going to be Crane that makes the move stick. I've got to say here, Stevenson looks like he's going down the wrong way. He was up higher than this. He was up into that top 10, and he has just seemed to fall down through the order here in the middle stages of this race.
Might just be a case of tire wear. Stevenson only falling more and more by the lap. And in terms of lap time, the last time they crossed the line, it was 157.5 for Stevenson, 156.9 for Crane. So about more than 0.6 of a second there on the marks for both of them. And now Stevenson putting himself in the 158 bracket for lap time, heading for turn 1. So the problems only continue for the 116, and he might just look at pit strategy as a way to pick things back up. There's a look at Arnie Klassen, your race leader, and now further back, Andrew Smiley on Stacy Iwata. Smiley has been here on the back bumper of Iwata for a couple of laps now, but has not been able to get close enough to do anything, and now through the climbing S's, will this be the opportunity for Smiley? For now, it is not, and down through South Bend, or what I would call, DJ, the most scary corner here at VIR. It's a beautiful exit for Smiley, and a dive on the brakes for Oak Tree, but backs out at the last second.
Yeah, not able to make it run, and I think that was a very good run there for Smiley, but not as good of a one there for Iwata. He really got things wrong coming through South Bend, had to brake the car a little bit more. Is now James Legault is going to take another look here on Robert Benson.
Took a crack at the 71 last lap, now finally breaking through into roller coaster. Legault with the spot made, and Benson having to back out. We've seen many of these times, DJ, that when you're side by side heading for roller coaster, there's always a driver that backs out, and Benson is the one that does. It looks like Legault dives on the inside, and that 27 machine, the winner at Road America not too long ago in race number 1 of Series 10 in the challenge class, now steps into the top 5 for the first time this evening after starting in P6. That's where he had been practically all race long, and throughout that heat race pretty much in the same vein. So nice progress here by that number 27, but of course does have around 4 seconds to catch up to Mark Doran, and that seemed to be a little strategy in its own right, DJ, because while Legault spent so much time trying to get around Benson, it was not that quick of an effort, or rather not that lengthy of an effort for Doran. So here's a look at Jeremy Main again going off in the same place that Doran went off earlier in tonight's race. Just grabs a bit of the tire barriers with the Motul signs on it in Oak Tree, but back on his way he goes.
Yeah, back on his way as goes, and I want to draw some attention here to Mark Doran as we continue to watch right now. He's got that gap down under 3.5 tenths of a second to David Palmer. We ride on board with the 486 right here. He's been slowly but surely chipping away, and I think he found his rhythm here on the last 2 laps. On lap 10, he was able to take out 7 tenths of a second. On lap 11, that last lap, 9, nearly a full second taken out. So he is coming on here at this point. He's got the gap now under 3 seconds as they work their way onto the backstretch, and I don't think that a podium position is out of the question here for Mark Doran.
And if you blank point, look at the lap times, 154.234 for Doran. That is the fastest out of anyone in the top 5 as they all cross the stripe. The second in that group, the 154.7 set by your leader, Arnie Klassen in clean air. So Doron, despite the early troubles, now just doing all that he can to flex his muscle, flex his speed, and going into the pit stops. This might just be a great setup here for him in order to gain some more track position, as now falls around 2.8 seconds behind David Palmer. But the most important thing, DJ, for Doron is that he can see the car in front of him now. It's not a case of not being able to see anyone and just kind of hanging in there and running against the track. Now you're running against the track, but you can see somebody. It's some extra motivation, adds a little bit of hunger into the next 16 and a half minutes here, heading for the pit stop.
Yeah, exactly. You give that carrot ahead of a driver, and sometimes that's a very, very crucial thing. As a driver, when you're having to run to a delta and just looking at that black box and those times kind of ticking away, it can get a little monotonous. If you've got that driver that you can see in front of you, as Andrew Smiley has had a big off coming down through NASCAR Bend.
And into the tire barriers he goes, and I was watching that battle shortly before he went off and saw that entrance and thought, no way he would make it. Grabs a piece of the grass on the right side of his GT4, Cayman Club Sport, and goes hard into the barriers. And Smiley, all that progress he had been making on Stacy Iwata and a potential pass for 7th, now all ripped away from him, as there's Randy Lervold in the 614 trying to catch up to Robert Gallus in the 809. That gap has shrinked significantly, but a tough break for Andrew Smiley there, DJ.
Yeah, very tough break indeed. You really hate to see that for Smiley. And he was really starting to close down on the back of Stacy Iwata, but that has now presented a new battle to us with Robert Galeas and Randy Lervold getting involved in this right now.
They'll get close to each other, and they are catching Smiley, who made that mistake. So it'll be a 3-car train heading off of Oak Tree onto the back straightaway and chasing for that roller coaster section of the racetrack. Gallus has been under fire the past couple of laps. Lervold has been fiery up to this point. A big draft from Lervold. Can he look to the inside? Yes, he can. And this will be the 3rd pass, I think, entering roller coaster, DJ, that we've seen out of that 614. A dive on the brakes. Can he get into Smiley? Smiley's a little further off on the side, and it almost looked like he was going to go off completely into those tire barriers, but fortunately he doesn't. And heading for Hog Pen, Randy Lervold can look for a 2-for-1.
Yeah, and I think he's going to get it, because as I take a look here at Andrew Smiley's car, that right front, courtesy here of sharp eyes from our director, Ryan Bowers, got some pretty hefty damage on it. And indeed, not surprised there, Smiley's going to come down into pit lane. That's going to deny us of a battle, but that's going to give a position here to Randy Lervold.
And it looked like over the radio that was a thank you from Randy Lervold as Smiley takes it down to the pit lane, and I believe the second driver to do so tonight. The only other one was Alex Lidback, who we saw pit in the first couple of laps in this race, and we still don't know exactly why he came down for pit road, but maybe we see that strategy unfold as we get a little closer now, around 8 laps to go until this feature race can be concluded. Here's Lisa Eskridge, a little under fire here at this juncture, and this is by the number 010 of David Purdy. Actually, no, that is not. I think that's a lead lap car.
No, it's a car that's a lap down. That's actually Casey McDonald.
Yes. Yeah, apologies there. That 15 behind Lisa Eskridge. He is 2 laps down. McDonald missed the heat race in the first 15 minutes, and it has been a struggle ever since. Jack Stevenson back to 17th and actually drops to 18th. Tim Schrock going to go by. Alex Lidback also making his way through, but Lisa Eskridge, remember we saw some of the troubles that she faced in the heat race, rejoining the track and having a bit of a scuffle with Stevenson on the back straightaway. It seems as though this one a much cleaner event as Eskridge rides in P11.
Yeah, going to try to just hold on to a good top 15 position here at this point. And she's got about 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds back to David Purdy. That's actually Purdy that you just saw kick up some dirt on the exit of South Bend. We've got another taker down into pit lane, though. Kenneth, that's Mark Doran on coming on in.
This is an interesting call. The first one inside the top 5 to come in for pit service. And now that rises the question, what does Arnie Klassen do? What does Jonathan Reber do? What does David Palmer do? And so on. Same for James Legault and Robert Benson. All these drivers that are getting around Doran right now with around 6 laps to go. And Doran obviously going to take some time to possibly damage repair his GT4. But it looks like it'll be a relatively quick stop, 13.1 seconds. in the stall for Duran. He's out in P9. It'll fall to 10th and possibly to 11th as Lisa Eskridge comes off of Hawk Pen in the final corner. There's a look at the 486. Got a bit of the damage repair, got the tires and fuel on his way. And now we watch for the leaders to do the same.
Yeah, and the question here is going to be for Doran is he's got Tom Crane and Robert Gallus right in front of him, and are they going to hold him up a little bit? That's going to be my big question. Are Clausen, Reber, and Palmer going to be able to stretch a little bit of an advantage? Let's also draw some attention here to this battle between Clausen and Reber. It looks like on this last lap, Arnie made a bit of a mistake and lost about 3 seconds to Reber, and Reber may now be in the catbird seat to be able to make a little bit of a challenge here towards the end of the race.
Yeah, that is true, and even if he can't make a direct challenge for position on the racetrack, it's only getting him a little closer, and it could help his placement in terms of pit road. Clausen just had a big mistake in turn 1, and while Clausen did not officially go off entirely, that slowdown, like you said, DJ, sacrificed about 3 seconds worth on the racetrack. So Reber is there, and much like we said with Duran earlier tonight, Reber can now see the leader. It's been a while since he's been able to do that and get a look at the back bumper of that 242, but seeing that car not too far off in the distance could give him a little more motivation, a little more dedication to run these laps as perfectly as possible. And as they cross the line, practically even between the two as David Palmer out of the Allegheny region comes in for service.
And remember, this is going to be pretty crucial there. Oh, he missed his stall. He had to pull his way forward. I was about to say this is going to be absolutely crucial in the battle for that final podium position between Doran and Palmer. And I think that little bit of a mistake may have just cost him.
Yeah, that might just be a couple of spots for Palmer, and going by are Robert Gallus, Mark Duran, and Tom Crane. Remember, we saw a short-lived battle between the 486 and the 864. Duran has now weaved his way into 8th and might just look at 7th in at least the next lap or so as he's closed in by about a couple of tenths of a second, now within half a second over that 809. So we'll watch and see exactly how that shapes out as we head into the final 10 minutes here from VIR. And again, we are expecting at least a pit stop by your leaders or so. It looks like with the way things are running right now and how clean things have gone, nobody wants to come in. We'll keep our eyes on that, but heading for the S's, it appears to be Duran's momentum and his advantage. Going up to the climbing S's, can the 486 do anything to get by Gallus?
Let's see if he can make the little bit of a move here at this point. I don't think he's going to get a chance, but maybe we can see that run that we've seen him put on before coming through South Bend. Gets a very good run, and he's going to look down to the inside, Kenneth.
To the inside for Oak Tree. Gallus trying to play defensive strategies, and that will not work. Duran clear for 7th.
Great heads up there from Duran. We've seen him do that many, many a time. And your leaders, both of them coming down into pit lane here at this point.
Clausen and Reber in 3rd place. Legault will find out. Legault's coming in as well. Robert Benson looks to follow suit. So your top 4 all in conjunction make that top 5 collectively all coming in with about 8 and 50 seconds left, 8 minutes and 50 seconds left here from VIR. The largest chunk of cars we've seen on the pit lane, and most importantly, DJ, who wins the race off pit road? Clausen does by a large margin.
Yeah, he's going to be able to really grow that gap here, but not as much as I thought he was. It's only about 1.6 seconds, so Reber able to get a good run. He was actually about 9/10 of a second faster in the box, and true to form here comes Mark Doran coming back into that 3rd place position. He is back on the podium.
And it was an interesting but effective call for Duran as he slips back into the podium, but he's got 7.5 seconds to make up if he wants to see that back bumper of Jonathan Reber, and even then a couple of more seconds, 2.2, before he can find his way back to clean air and the race lead in the form of Arnie Clausen in that 242. Remember the finishing order of these 3 drivers. The last time we raced in this challenge class at Road America, Clausen finished in the last spot of the podium, P3. Jonathan Reber had some struggles, came home as the last car in the top 10. And Mark Duran came home just a spot better than Clausen in P2. So there are a lot of storylines in terms of the championship lead. Here's Tim Schrock, the 068, coming for pit road with 7.5 minutes remaining.
Yeah, and want to draw some credit here to Lisa Eskridge and David Purdy, who have been able to make it this entire race without coming down into pit lane. That's some very, very light right foots from the both of them, and that's some pretty heads-up driving. Good run for the both of them. They'll fall their way back down through the order here once they come into pit lane, but it's still a well-done drive.
And the great thing for both of them, they are the two hardest chargers since the drop of the green. As the running order will update, Lisa Eskridge will be up 8 spots since we started this event. Rolled off in 15th at the green flag and now sits in P7. And as for David Purdy, started 17th and now is in P10. So like you said, DJ, just a lot of great runs for these drivers, as of course they're still going to have to hit pit road, but this is a glimpse of hope and a glimpse of positivity for both of them. And even then, credit to them, after the heat race, both of them have been able to keep their cars clean, stay out of trouble, stay with their cars on the track, and avoid catastrophes. So for both of them, it seems to be a pretty big win at the end of this race as we now approach 6 minutes and 25 seconds.
Well, it's as we talked about, keeping it clean, keeping it together at this Virginia International Raceway is what it's all about. As Lisa is going to come down into pit lane here at this point, kind of expected, and I would not be surprised if we see Purdy also doing the same thing when it comes down to his entrance into pit lane. Right now, looks like a lot of our battles are starting to diminish here a little bit. We've still got a pretty good one a little farther back down in the field between Stevenson and Lidbeck, but Purdy also coming down into the pits as we focus in on Stevenson and Lidbeck here, fighting it out, going down through roller coaster.
And again, we saw Lidbeck pit about 15 laps ago, so around on lap 3, and it was a really early stop. We questioned whether that was really going to work at the end of this race, and it really hasn't done that much to help Lidbeck's case. Remember, he was 10th at the end of the 15-minute heat race. He now sits in 15th, but of course a great battle that we might see. And with David Purdy coming out of pit road, we might just have ourselves a nice little trio, or maybe even a quartet. Lisa Eskridge also coming out not too far ahead of these guys, so just might be a little thing to watch for as we do have a battle out on track. One car around, and that is Randy Lurvold going through NASCAR Bend in trouble.
Oh, such a heartbreak there for Randy, as he's had a real yo-yo of a couple of races here. Let's take a look at exactly what happened. This is Lurvold coming out of pit lane. I wonder if this is just slightly cooler tires, brings it down through, just gets off on the exit there. You can see that car being a little bit sideways, and then just too much speed through NASCAR Bend. Wasn't able to get it closed down, and there you see the snap. Yeah, coming out of left hook there. He just kind of got things a little bit wrong. That was enough to be able to just sort of start a rolling mistake, as it were.
It just grabs a bit of the grass, gets sideways, and tries to save the car, but the revs are way too high, and he couldn't slow the car down. And then there's that stark contrast right about there. It snaps completely around just because you're sideways in the grass and you're slipping all over the place. You don't have a lot of grip, and then bam, the tires immediately grip on the asphalt, and your car takes a severely different way around. And for Lurvold, escapes severe damage, and he was all by himself, so nobody got into him. But Lurvold's race and all the progress that he had been making since the drop of the green, and now completely diminished for the most part. And the next car in line, Robert Gallus, is about 2.93 seconds ahead of him. Back to focus with your leader, Arnie Klassen, 2.3 seconds ahead of Jonathan Reber in that 147. You could see him on the far shot there, heading through the climbing S's and eventually South Bend, going down the hill for Oak Tree. And for Klassen, DJ just has to avoid all those mistakes, and especially that one in the first corner. Klassen has had rare mistakes throughout tonight's festivities, and Klassen might just be looking for the first win of Series 10 in the challenge class, if he can hold on.
Yeah, he's going to just try to hold on here at this point. In 1.9 seconds, a good run there for him. 0 incidents here at this point as he continues to run. I think this is going to be probably 2 laps to go at the line is going to be my best guess here, as I don't think it takes a full minute and 14 seconds to be able to bring his way down into the line. So 2 laps to go. And as I look there, Klassen, it's been a little bit of an ebb and flow. 0.7 of a second lost on that last lap, and he's gonna see how it plays out here, though. Let's see when they cross over the line, Kenneth.
See when they cross the line. Also to note, there is lap traffic ahead of the road. That is Tim Schrock and Andy McCune. Klassen might just get by before this race is over. They cross the line, 154.75 for Klassen, a 154.65 for Jonathan Reber. Both cars in front of Arnie Klassen, Andy McCune and Tim Schrock went off simultaneously out of the exit of the horseshoe. What has happened here?
I'm not sure. Let's take a look. This may have been an issue of just sort of spinning in sympathy as McCune gets on the throttle there. I think that's a little bit of that new torque curve that we talked about coming back to bite, and that was a completely unrelated incident there from the car behind. Just two drivers having their own problems. Schrock looked like he carried a little bit too much speed into the corner, and that's what sent him spinning around.
Are there brown pants for Arnie Klassen? You probably bet, with the incident right in front of him and almost had that lead flash before his eyes. Here's a look back at Robert Lidback here, Alex Lidback rather, looking on Jack Stevenson. And then Lisa Eskridge, that third car up ahead. And then obviously David Purdy in the 010. Remember, Eskridge and Purdy had been the last two drivers to come in for service with around a minute and a half left as they will cross the line now. And so we'll see if any passes are made. We did see some great battles near the end of the 15-minute heat race, DJ. Are we set up for another spectacular showdown here with a minute and a half of the feature?
We very well could be. Not a lot of time left to go here. We'll have to see how these drivers are able to get themselves around. Klassen losing a little bit of time. It's down to about 1.6 seconds, about 0.3 taken away there.
And we will get into the final lap here from Virginia International Raceway. And can Jonathan Reber pull off the upset and get around Arnie Klassen before this is all said and done? Remember, now it's up to 2.1 seconds, but Reber still has that opportunity to attack, and there is wide variety in mistakes that you can make here at this venue, and Klassen might just find one of them if he cannot complete this lap without any troubles through horseshoe for the last time. It appears to be perfect. Reber in the same vein, 1.9 seconds between the two.
1.9 seconds. That means Klassen was able to claw away a couple of tenths of a second there, about 67 thousandths actually on that last lap. He's just got to keep this together for one more circulation around this circuit, Kenneth.
And Klassen, who finished inside the top three at Road America just a couple of weeks prior, now might be looking directly at a points leading position heading into Suzuka through the climbing S's for the final time, looking for that left curve in his South Bend. There is no lap traffic ahead of him, and after Oak Tree there will be only a couple of more corners left. Gap still at 2 seconds and counting. Reber has diminishing chances left.
Yeah, he certainly does. Klassen looks like he's putting in the overdrive here, and it's going to be certainly to be enough out of that slipstream range of Reber. And so I think that's a good sign here. Reber going to try to do everything he can, but barring a mistake out of Klassen coming up through roller coaster, I think he looks pretty good.
As long as Klassen can avoid mistakes, this might just be his race to win through the roller coaster section for the last time. He'll go down the hill, back over the crest into the final corner, hog pen here at VIR. And this looks to be the best ending to what's been a dominant race after Mark Duran's mistake off the final corner. The car says look on it, and you're looking at a winner here from VIR in the challenge class. Arnie Klassen victorious.
Crosses over the line and will take victory for that 242. Reber with a fantastic drive, 1.9 seconds, the final gap between the two. And let's talk here about Mark Doran down through the field, and will that 486 back into podium contention.
That is relentless nature out of Mark Duran. There's fourth place, David Palmer. Was had such a consistent night. We didn't talk too much about him, but Palmer comes home in fourth. Legault will end up as the last driver inside the top five, and then we'll watch every other driver coming across the stripe. Robert Benson next, then Stacy Iwata will come home in seventh. We saw the pressure put on from Smiley to Iwata, but ultimately that does not end up in Smiley's favor. He ends up in eighth. Ninth place will go to Tom Crane, now coming out of Hog Pen. He's got Randy Lorvold not too far behind, but it looks like no mistake out of the 864. So those two spots are going to be consistent and true at the end of this race. Robert Gallas comes home in 11th. Lisa Eskridge coming off the final corners now for 12th. And Jack Stevenson, final opportunity, not successful, and he'll stay in P12 or P13 rather.
Yeah, as it looks like there, Lisa's going to be able to hold on to that top 12 position with a late strategy to pit. I think that was very well proved out for Lisa, up 3 positions on the day. Good heads up for the driver there of that number 8 machine.
Everybody else coming across the line, David Purdy Looks like Chris Schuessler now one of the last cars to get by, and also for Casey McDonald, who is 2 laps down but already crossed the line to end this race in 19th. Arnie Klassen, the winner here from Virginia International Raceway. We'll talk to him and the rest of your top 3 as we conclude our coverage of Event 2 in the PCA Sim Racing Series 10 Challenge class. Don't go anywhere. We've got more after the break.
Brake a little earlier if that's going to be the case. He's actually got a nose ahead as they come down into the braking zone. He's going to do it the hard way.
If you're a Porsche owner looking for reliable, convenient service without leaving the comfort of your home or office, look no further and take advantage of the Exchange at Home complimentary pickup and drop-off service exclusively at the Porsche Exchange in Highland Park. At the Porsche Exchange, it's all about creating a legendary ownership experience that embodies our guest lifestyle. Our Porsche service team utilizes cutting-edge technology that delivers a transparent service visit and keeps us in constant contact with our guests. And I can't think of anyone more qualified to work on your Porsche, new or classic, than our Porsche certified technicians. Whether you're a longtime guest or new to our dealership, I welcome you to experience legendary at the Porsche Exchange.
Welcome back to Virginia International Raceway, where we have just found a winner here in Event 2 for the PCA Sim Racing Series 10 Challenge class, and that winner is Arnie Klassen in the number 242, and with this win should ultimately take over the championship lead in the class, heading for Suzuka in a couple of weeks' time. Jonathan Reaver, despite best efforts to catch Klassen in the closing laps, is only about a 2nd and 9/10 off of the race leader. Mark Duron have to commend him for his absolute comeback after crashing from the lead in Oak Tree and hitting the tire barrier, and came all the way back to 3rd at the end of it all. David Palmer ends up as the 4th car in line at the checkered flag. James Legault ends up as the last one in the top 5. Then goes Robert Benson in the 71. Stacy Iwata with pressure from Andrew Smiley, but they both finished 7th and 8th. Tom Crane in 9th, and rounding out the top 10, the number 614 of Randy Lurvold.
In 11th, it was Robert Galeas, followed by Lisa Askerich, whose late pit stop maneuver ended things well for her. Jack Stevenson, it was 13th, followed by David Purdy and Chris Schuessler, the last driver on the lead lap. Then it was Tim Schrock, Andy McCune, and Jeremy Main, who finished a lap down. Alex Lidback and Casey McDonald, both 2 laps down.
That does it for our 20-car field here for Virginia International Raceway, and it is our time to get to the victory circle, where we are joined by the 242 car of Arnie Klassen. And Arnie, after the finish at Road America not too long ago, you wrapped up the top 3, had great feelings about that, but I'm sure that definitely does not top the feeling you have right now after winning here from VIR.
Oh, it does not, especially since I did not expect anything like this, since in practice I do terrible at this track. It's always off into the grass for me.
Well, you held on, and you were ultimately one of the fastest cars near the end. I know that Mark Doran's mistake gave you the race lead, but we knew that you holding on to P1 was absolutely no fluke. How were you able to adjust after Doran's mistake and keep yourself out front through the rest of the outing?
Well, I noticed that Jonathan and I were pretty much evenly matched. There were some places where he was faster and some places where I was faster, so I mainly concentrated to not make mistakes in the places where I knew he would be faster, because that's where he would catch up on me.
And was there any concern that Reaver would catch you there in those closing laps as you were getting by?
Yeah, at the end, the tires started to let go, and I had to brake a little earlier here and there, and I knew that I made only one mistake, just one tire a little bit off. He would definitely catch me. So it was a nail-biter.
Certainly was, but you end up victorious with the third place at Road America. With this win here from VIR, probably going to be the ultimate points leader heading into Suzuka. So how big of a momentum shift is that for you after tonight?
That's that's pretty interesting. I didn't expect it, and so now I'm going to have to even put more practice into Suzuka. And with the Cup car not having ABS, that's going to show off my weakness in braking, and we'll see what I can actually do over there.
Well, nonetheless, we're excited to see you at Suzuka, but on behalf of our entire broadcast team here at Podium Esports, Ani, congratulations on the win. We'll see you in Japan in a couple of weeks.
All right, thank you very much, and thanks to our sponsors as well. Thanks to Poster Exchange.
So that is Arne Klassen in the 242, the winner here from VIR. 1.9 seconds behind him, DJ was the driver of the 147. Jonathan Reber, you're caught up with him.
Jonathan, it looked like a relatively quiet race out there for you, just having to battle the track, but how was it behind the wheel of the car?
It was pretty good. I mean, yeah, a quiet race, but that's the way I like them, so that was good. When Mark qualified up ahead of us for the feature race, I kind of thought he'd be gone based on his pace in qualifying and then Heat 1. Luckily for us, he went off, but yeah, it was good. It was good.
Well, talk to me a little bit about those last couple of laps. Arnie just admitted to us that his tires were starting to go off a little bit, and he was worried about you catching him. Did you have a little bit of that hope about maybe stealing away a win?
A little bit, but not by me passing him. I could see he's slowing up a little bit, so I was probably more hoping he'd make a mistake and slip off, because basically every time we got close to a straight, any kind of passing error, he was just that bit quicker as we entered it, so I never really was able to catch him. I was catching him in places where you can't pass, so it was the only way I'd have got past him would have been if he'd made an error, I think.
Well, as we look ahead here to Suzuka, changing up to the Porsche Cup cars, that's going to be a pretty big challenge, I've got to imagine. How do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a pretty big challenge too. I think everyone that I'm speaking to on the Discord channel is saying the same thing. It looks like Suzuka's going to be difficult. But hey, it's we did it in season. I had a go at it then, but it's not at least completely unfamiliar like VIR was before I started practicing for this race too. So I'm looking forward to trying and seeing how I get on against the rest of the group.
Well, Jonathan, we're looking forward to it as well. And before we let you go, congratulations again on a second place here tonight.
Thank you very much. If I could throw out a quick thank you to the UCO group, who are so supportive for all those who are in the lower leagues, and my wife for putting up with the amount of shouting and swearing he hears whenever I'm practicing for these races. So thank you very much.
You've got to have a supportive spouse that understands the addiction of sim racing. I love it. That was Jonathan Reber, your second place finisher here tonight.
What a great story. Jonathan Reber ends up at second place, but ultimately a very compelling story for the driver who sits behind him in third, the 486 of Mark Doran. And Mark, I think the only thing I can really ask after this entire 21-lap feature is how, with the mistake, how were you able to get back in for this podium finish?
Yeah, well, it's the short memory syndrome, right? You make a mistake like that, I just reverted to brakes before the update, and I just enough to drop a wheel off the outside and got off track. But at that point, you just got to wipe the slate clean, start over, put your head down, hit your marks, and take opportunities as they present themselves in front of you. Right? This is a very fun track to drive, but it's very hard to race because it's actually quite tricky to find places to pass on this track with cars that are very similar in spec. So yeah, it was just a question of short memory, right? Forget what happened on that first pass through 10-11 and start the race again.
And it seems like from an outwards perspective, that was the shift in mindset where you lost the race lead, but you said, forget all that. I'm just going up to the front no matter what it'll cost me. And going into the pit strategy as well, where you were somewhat in an interesting spot. You pitted a couple of laps early than a majority of the field. What was that call like, and how much development did you have in trying to pit early to gain track position later?
Yeah, well, that was kind of a planned move. I figured if I was behind somebody that I really wanted to get by and not necessarily closing the gap all that quickly, I needed some other way to get by perhaps, and the pit is an opportunity. I've actually spent some time deliberately practicing that pit entry, charging up to it as fast as you possibly can, slam on the brakes, hit the pit limiter, and try and waste as little time on entry as possible. And I figure that might be, I thought it might be worth a little time to me, and so it proved, I think, because I took a little bit more fuel, so it probably took a smidge more time stationary, but it was enough to jump me a couple of cars, I think, so it worked out well.
It definitely did. You finish on the podium after what was another podium finish not too long ago in race number 1 at Road America. So now we head over to Suzuka, brand new car, the Porsche 911 GT3 Cup cars. What do you think of that race, and how are you going to perform in that new car?
Yeah, well, that's definitely a wait and see. The Cup car I've driven quite a lot over the course of the winter, so I'm looking forward to driving that. But the little secret here is right this second, I don't even own a copy of the Suzuka track, so it's going to be brand new to me. I've got a lot of prep work to do.
Well, nonetheless, going to be fun watching you in that learning process. It's going to be awesome to see you in a couple of weeks' time. Mark, on behalf of all of us at Podium Esports, congratulations on the 3rd place finish, and we'll see you at Suzuka soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you guys for doing such a great job with the commentary, and of course, thanks to Porsche Exchange for making that all happen for us. And I hope that 2 incident points tonight doesn't put me out of running for the Six Sigma Clean Driver Award.
So that is the 486 of Mark Duran, the winner, or rather the winner out of the, I guess he was the winner of the heat race, but he was not the winner at the end, but still at the podium. And I think a winner in his own eyes with how he was able to come back, TJ, through all of the challenges that he had to face after he went wide at Oak Tree earlier in the event. So now we head off, a little bit of a break, 2 weeks, but we return on practically the other side of the globe in Japan, Suzuka. But the biggest thing here is that for event 3, we've got a new car, switching up the statement here with the 911 GT3 Cup car, the 992, the one that they run in the Porsche Esports Super Cup on the pro side here on iRacing. So a lot of different things that a lot of drivers have to learn with Suzuka, which is a pretty fun track to drive.
Yeah, it certainly is, but I think drivers are going to find themselves with a bit of a handful. Let's remember that 992 Cup car has no traction control and no ABS, and especially around a circuit like Suzuka that is so fast and flowing, I think you could find yourself being caught out a little bit, and so drivers are really going to have to prepare, and we have heard all of them talking here tonight about preparation. That is what allowed for our top 3 to be able to get into those positions tonight, and I think it's going to be the same story next time out.
We'll see that consistency play out in a couple of weeks' time, where we end up at Suzuka. Join us here again on Wednesday night, though, April 12th, next week at 9:25 p.m. Eastern, not for the challenge class, but for the club class event number 3 at Suzuka and the 911 GT3 Cup cars. It's going to be a lot of fun, and when we get the challenge class ultimately here at Suzuka, and you see the bridge and the over-under section of the racetrack with those 911 GT3 Cup cars, it is going to be so much fun. We'd like to thank our sponsors for Series 10 and all of their unwavering support, starting with the Porsche Exchange and, of course, Six Sigma Sim Racing, the main sponsor of the Clean Driver Award. For everyone at the steering committee at PCA Sim Racing, and a big thank you to our team on the broadcast tonight, our social media manager Cameron Aubernon, our camera creator Dougie Beard, our producer Ryan Bauer, and of course my colleague in the broadcast booth, DJ Clark. My name is Kenneth Bueno, saying thank you so much for watching our broadcast of PCA Sim Racing Series 10 and the challenge class from VIR. We'll see you at Suzuka in a couple of weeks' time.